When you were a student in school, you go through all kinds of drills. When I was younger, it was fire drills, and we also lived near a nuclear power plant, so we went through nuclear drills as well. These drills are designed to help you to understand what to do if the worst case scenario happens. Nowadays, children go through drills for lockdowns and for all kinds of various awful things that seem to be happening in our world more and more. I can remember when I was working in a school and we did a lockdown drill, and we would have parents come in and say that we were scaring the children unnecessarily and making them aware of things that would never happen. Sadly, though, we do live in a world where we need our children to be prepared for the worst of the worst scenarios, at least slightly, because you just never know what could happen. Even though schools and staff and children are prepared, though, we know that there are a lot of school shootings in recent memory that have gone down, and a lot of lives, many of the lives of precious, innocent children, have been lost. With September being back to school month, I want to focus in on some of these dreadful incidents that have taken place in school settings over the years, because the reality is that the world is becoming scarier, and we all need to be prepared. I'm going to kick this month off with one of the worst of these true crime cases. It took place on December 14th of 2012 in Newtown, Connecticut, and 26 people were murdered, 20 of them elementary students between the ages of 6 and 7, and countless lives were forever changed on that day. Hello, my name is Lance, and welcome to episode 147 of Gone But Never Forgotten, the Sandy Hook school shooting. Sandy Hook Elementary School, as of November 30th of 2012, had an enrollment of 456 students, and all students were between the ages of kindergarten and grade 4. The school, as most schools in the U.S. now do, had heightened security measures that had been upgraded not too terribly long before the shooting took place. All visitors at the school were required to be admitted via visual identification on a video monitor. The doors to the school were always locked immediately after the students arrived in the morning at 9:30 a.m. As we start to go into the story, one of the things that is most haunting is considering what may have been different if timing had been slightly different. I often wonder with this case if there would have been even more casualties, or if there would have possibly been less if the shooter had arrived during arrival time when students would have been scattered all over the school rather than situated in classrooms. Sandy Hook is located in Newtown, which is in Fairfield County, Connecticut, and is located, for point of reference, approximately 17 miles or 30 kilometers northwest of New Haven, 30 miles or 50 kilometers southwest of Hartford, and approximately 60 miles or 100 kilometers north of New York City. Newtown is certainly not known for violent crime. It's a small city with approximately 28,000 residents, and violent crime had always been rare. In the 10 years prior to the Sandy Hook Massacre, there had only been one homicide in Newtown. I'm going to start off here by introducing the obvious worst part of the story, that being the shooter, Adam Peter Lanza. Adam was born on April 22nd of 1992 to Nancy and Peter Lanza. He was their second son. He had an older brother named Ryan, who was 4 years older than he was. The family was of Italian descent, and his family life really started off in ways that many would dream of. The Lanzas were very wealthy, with Peter working as a high-level executive and Nancy having worked a lot of her life within finance. Although they were wealthy, the family was said to have been incredibly loving and caring, and it was said that both Ryan and Adam were brought up in what was the best of two worlds. They had money, so they were able to afford everything that they needed and wanted, but they also had the benefits of a loving and doting family. Peter and Nancy had met in high school and had been high school sweethearts. They seemingly had the all-American love story. Adam was born and raised for his younger years in Kingston, New Hampshire, and early on it became apparent to his parents that he had many challenges. Even from a young age, they could tell that he was struggling to communicate, and he also struggled with sensory difficulties, socialization delays, and repetitive behaviors. It was said that he did not speak at all before he was 3 years old, and even when he started to speak, he seemed to speak his own language and was creating his own ways to communicate rather than picking up on the cues of others. At first it was believed that he may actually be a mute, and then it became evident that he rather struggled from speech problems and delays. Once Lanza hit elementary school, he was diagnosed with a sensory integration disorder. Growing up, the boys were often left with Nancy because Peter, due to his work, was often pulled away from the family home for extended periods, and as such, the boys grew up favoring their mom. Nancy was very fond of guns, and she owned an extensive collection. She also had taken both of her boys to the local shooting range from a very early age. It's been said that Adam first had a gun in his hands when he was only 4 years old. Although Nancy was often alone with the boys, it's been said that she didn't have any issues with that, and she didn't have any significant issues with them that were out of the ordinary. Adam, in particular, was prone to having fits and temper tantrums, but for the most part, Nancy took all of that in stride. That's not to say that Peter was not still a significant part of his sons' lives, though. He was. When Peter was home, he spent all of the time that he could with his two boys, and he also took them camping and hunting so that they could become comfortable with the outdoors. Looking back, Peter said that Adam was always different from his brother, but that he had always seen Adam as a, quote, normal little weird kid, unquote. When Adam was 6 years old, Peter received his dream job, and the family made the tough decision to uproot from their perfect home and perfect life, and they moved to Newtown. When the family moved to Newtown, Lanza attended Sandy Hook Elementary School, where he went for 4.5 years. In the midst of those years at Sandy Hook, there would be another significant change in the life of Lanza, as his parents would get a divorce. Lanza was only 9 years old at the time. First, I want to point out that yes, I did say that Lanza attended Sandy Hook Elementary. I'm not sure if that's something that I heard and forgot, or if that is something that people have not reported as widely as they should. But yes, in the span of a few short years, Lanza and his family moved to a new city and state. He was forced to start attending a new school on account of that, and his parents divorced, breaking the family up. Lanza would stay with his mom and his brother, and he lived with his mom until the day of the massacre. I've read on numerous occasions, and I will even state near the end of this episode, that reports said that there was no significant tie between Lanza and Sandy Hook. But it seems to me that all of this turbulence and his developmental and mental health issues would certainly be a link and part of the reason that he chose Sandy Hook. Adam would later be asked in life by psychiatrists if the divorce of his parents had significantly impacted him and his life, and he had said that his parents were as irritating to one another as they were towards him. Even though the family had suffered an irreparable rift, they both still spent time with their children, and Lanza did have significant time with Nancy as well as with Peter. After Sandy Hook, Lanza moved on to Newtown Middle School in 2004, and his mom said that it was clear by that time that he was racked with anxiety and mental health issues. Lanza started to routinely get upset at school because of constant classroom changes in middle school from period to period, and he said that all of the movement and all of the noise were very overstimulating for him, and that all of that change and noise made him anxious. He was briefly moved by his mother from Newtown Middle School to St. Rose of Lima, which was a smaller school with smaller class sizes. Lanza would be diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome at the age of 13, and it was believed that at this age, his shift to adolescence also caused his symptoms to grow increasingly worse. For those of you that do not know, Asperger's syndrome is a term that was formerly used to describe a neurodevelopmental condition that is characterized by significant difficulties in social interaction and non-verbal communication. What was formerly classified as Asperger's syndrome is now covered as a part of the autism spectrum disorder. By this age, Adam had developed a lot of compulsions, such as not touching doorknobs, instead using Kleenex as a glove to open doors, and he also had a compulsion of changing his socks, sometimes as many times as 20 times a day. Many people have said that while many parents would generally and gently try to steer their children away from these compulsions and their symptoms, Nancy in a way leaned into them and even fed into them for Lanza. At the age of 14, Lanza would go to Newtown High School, where he was named as a part of the school's honor list in 2007. Students and teachers that knew him during this time said that he was incredibly intelligent, but that he was also incredibly nervous and fidgety all the time. They said that Lanza avoided attracting attention, and he was not comfortable at all with socializing with his peers or even his teachers. He was not known to have had any close friends when he was in school, and by the time that he was 16, he was starting to go to school infrequently. Lanza would wind up receiving his high school diploma from Newtown High School, but he did so through a combination of independent learning and college classes because he was just not able to attend streamlined classes at the school any longer. He was largely homeschooled by Nancy. During this time as well, Nancy started to introduce Lanza to different types of guns, and she taught him the differences. She taught him how to use them, and she taught him how to discharge them. Peter's father has stated since the massacre that he suspects that Lanza may have had undiagnosed schizophrenia in addition to other conditions. It was reported that he had seen various doctors over the years as well as mental health specialists, but for the most part, even for his OCD and his Asperger's, he went unmedicated and mostly unchecked. It appears as though Lanza did not have any contact whatsoever with any mental health professionals after 2006. In the final months of Lanza's life, he was living a life of almost total isolation. He was also suffering from anorexia nervosa. He was 6 feet tall, and he only weighed 112 pounds at the time of his death. It was said after an autopsy that his anorexia had been bad enough that he was malnourished, and he had suffered from some minor brain damage. Lanza spent much of his time in his room with the windows blacked out by garbage bags, and he spent most of that time playing video games like World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, and various other games that mostly centered around shooting and killing others. He had even downloaded an RPG that puts the player in the position of an active shooter at Columbine. Aside from his limited interactions with Nancy, Lanza's only real communication with the outside world came from people online who were into the same games and the same dark things that he was into. He often associated himself with other people who shared his dark obsession of mass murder. In the weeks leading up to the massacre, Nancy had made it known that she was ill and that she was interested in moving or even traveling. Nancy had even intended to purchase an RV for Lanza so that he could stay in the RV while potential home buyers looked at the home so that they would not run into Lanza and so that he would not be disturbed. It's believed that the thought of again leaving his comfort zone may have also been a massive trigger for Lanza. With all of his struggles and all of his love for weapons, Lanza had never had a run-in with the police, and he had no prior charges or offenses. He did, however, have access to his mother's guns. Even with all of the issues that Lanza had, everyone that knew himself and his mom, including his father, said that they did not believe that she had any fear towards Lanza whatsoever. She had not conveyed any fear of her son to any of her friends or even her sister. It was said that Nancy slept with her bedroom door unlocked, and she always kept her guns accessible in the home. The accessibility of those guns and the fact that Nancy seemed oblivious to some extent to where her son's head was at ultimately would be her downfall and would be the detriment to an incomprehensible number of people on December 14th of 2012. On that date, around 9 a.m., Lanza woke up and he chose his outfit very carefully. He put on a pale green pocket vest over top of a black polo shirt, which was also over top of a black t-shirt. He put on his black sneakers, black fingerless gloves, and a black canvas belt. He also put on a black boonie hat and a pair of sunglasses. There's little doubt that he put a lot of thought into what he would wear on that day. He knew something that nobody else knew, that it would be the last day of his life and the lives of many others. Sometime before 9:30 a.m., Adam walked into his mother's bedroom where it's believed that she was still asleep, and he shot her with a .22 caliber Savage Mark II rifle. Investigators would find her body after the massacre in her bed, still wearing her pajamas. Nancy had 4 gunshot wounds to her head, and because of the force of the weapon, her face was said to have been left largely unrecognizable. After murdering his mother, Lanza then piled some of her guns into her car, and he made his way to Sandy Hook Elementary School, which was only 5 miles away from their home. Lanza arrived at Sandy Hook at 9:35 a.m., and he quickly made his presence known by shooting his way through a glass panel that was next to the front entry doors of the school. He was briefly picked up on the video footage as he made his way in. He was now wearing yellow earplugs. Contrary to misinformation that's been spread over the years, Lanza was not wearing full body armor. Those initial shots were picked up over the school intercom system because it was being used for the morning announcements at the time that Lanza burst through that glass. At the time, school principal Don Hochsprung and school psychologist Mary Sherlack were in a meeting with a few faculty members when they also heard those shots, but they did not recognize the sounds that they heard as gunshots, and honestly, who can blame them? You're not expecting such a thing. Dawn, Mary, and a lead teacher that was also in the meeting, Natalie Hammond, also went into the hall to see what had caused the noise. When they stepped out into the hall, they came face to face with Lanza. The 3 women immediately started to yell, "Shoot her! Stay put!" to alert everyone else of the situation so that they would not end up in the line of fire. School caretaker Rick Thorne yelled for Lanza to put down the gun, but gunshots broke out, and Lanza killed Mary and Dawn and also shot Natalie in the leg, and she then also sustained a second gunshot wound. Natalie played dead as she fell to the floor in hopes that Lanza would believe that she was dead, and that worked. When the gunfire started, Rick had taken off down the hall to start warning staff and students of the active shooter, and Natalie was able to crawl into a room and she put her body up against the door to keep it closed. Natalie would later be treated at a hospital, and she did manage to survive. After Lanza had shot and killed Dawn and Mary, he entered into the main office of the school and looked around but did not see the people that were hiding in there, and so he returned back to the hallway. School nurse Sally Cox was hiding under her desk in her office, and she watched on as the door opened and Lanza's boots were visible to her in her office. He was facing her desk from approximately 20 feet away. He stood there for a few seconds, surveying the room, and then he turned away and left. Sally and the school secretary, Barbara Halstead, then called 911 and then hid in a first aid supply closet. Here are parts of the 911 calls that came in that showed that relative calmness of the staff that was calling in and the operators who received the calls. We will talk about response time here in a moment, but overall, everyone did a wonderful job in their positions, and there really is little doubt that lives were saved in the face of tragedy because of the abilities of the heroes that sprung into action in the school, whether that was hurting children or calling 911.
This report from Deborah Fayrick, we should warn you, what you're about to hear could be disturbing.
The first call came in from the school secretary moments after classes started. It gives an insight into how quickly the shooter, Adam Lanza, was able to get into the secured building.
Town 911, what's the location of the emergency?
Sandy Hook School. I think there's somebody shooting in here. Sandy Hook School.
Okay, what makes you think that?
Because somebody's got a gun. I saw a glimpse of somebody. They're running down the hallway.
Okay.
They're still running. They're still shooting. Sandy Hook School, please.
7 911 calls were released. They captured the fear and quiet urgency and lack of panic of those inside and at the police dispatch. One woman shot in the foot crawled into a classroom where several children hid near a bookcase.
Okay. Are you safe right now?
I think so. My classroom door is not locked.
Okay. Is there anybody that can lock the classroom door without being safe?
No.
Safe to do so. Okay. All right. Just try to stay where you are. Okay. Is there any way?
Absolutely, yes. There's children in this room, too.
Okay. Try to apply pressure, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. We have people coming, okay?
Uh-huh.
All right. Is there any other teacher with you in there, or is just students?
No, there's two other adults in the room with me.
Okay. All right. Are they right next to you, or where are they in the room?
No, they're over on the other side of the bookshelf.
Okay. All right. Are you okay right now?
For now, hopefully.
According to a report by the state's attorney, that teacher and the students in the classroom survived. It was custodian Rick Thorne in a different part of the school who became the eyes and ears for a police dispatcher.
I'm down the corridor.
All right, I want you to take cover. Jen, get the sergeant. All right, get everybody you can going down there. All right, let me get some information from you. What makes you think that?
The front glass was all shot out. It kept going on.
Okay.
Chris, I'm on the line with a 911 call with you.
It's still happening.
Shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School. All right.
All right, what about the students in the front of the building?
Dude, everything's locked up as far as I know. I'm not in the front.
All right, you're in lockdown?
Yeah, they're in lockdown. I keep hearing shooting. I keep hearing popping.
Guys, we got a shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown. That's what 911's ringing off the hook for.
At one point, the custodian, still on the phone with the dispatcher, is confronted by responding police officers. After he urgently identifies himself, he relays information between those officers and the 911 dispatcher.
I'm on the phone with dispatch. Victims in the building.
How many?
How many? 2 down.
On scene, Newtown police officers quickly understand the scope of the tragedy.
Call the state police, okay?
State police have been notified.
They've been notified.
And what becomes clear from listening to the tapes and exactly how they played out is that there was a certain calmness. There was a lot of urgency. Yes, there was a fear, a little bit of panic, but for the most part, everybody did what they needed to do to try to get where they needed so they could save as many people in that building. That is very clear from listening to these tapes. Jake?
Unfortunately, as people were doing their best to save lives, Lanza's goal continued on in earnest, and his goal was the polar opposite of that. Lanza made his way into room 8, which was a first grade classroom. The teacher in the room was Lauren Rousseau. She was a substitute teacher in the room. Lauren had herded the first grade students into the back of the room, and she was trying to get as many of the children into the bathroom in the classroom as she could. While she was doing that, Lanza managed to push his way into the classroom, though, and he indiscriminately started to shoot at everyone inside of the room. Lauren, a woman named Rachel Davino, who was a behavioral therapist who had just been working at the school for a week with a special needs student in the class, and 15 grade 1 students were all murdered by Lanza. From there, Lanza continued down the hall to room 10, which was another first grade classroom. The teacher in that classroom was Victoria Lee Soto. Victoria had moved the students in her classroom to the back of the class and into a closet and a bathroom. Victoria was moving to secure the classroom door when Lanza came through the door. Lanza immediately went to the back of the classroom and he saw the children everywhere. Differing reports say that one of the students, Jesse Lewis, shouted to his classmates to run for safety, and several of them did. Lanza managed to shoot some of them down as well. 6 of the students in room 10 managed to escape at a moment when Lanza stopped shooting because his gun jammed or he made a mistake in loading it. It was said that Victoria told Lanza at first that her students were in the auditorium and not in the classroom. But when the children started to run to escape, Lanza knew better. At that point, Victoria put herself between Lanza and the students, and she was also fatally shot. Anne-Marie Murphy, the special education teacher who worked in Victoria's classroom, was also shot and killed by Lanza. Her body would be found covering a 6-year-old child who tragically also died. 4 children also lost their lives in that room alongside Victoria and Anne-Marie. There were so many other heroes spread out through Sandy Hook. First grade teacher Caitlin Roig hid 15 of her students in a bathroom and barricaded the door and told them all to remain completely silent. Caitlin's class was the first one on the left side of the hallway where Lanza had started shooting, so it was a certainty that he would have passed that room. It's believed that he passed the classroom because of the silence and because a piece of black construction paper from a lockdown drill had been left over the window on the door. It's believed that Lanza likely believed that that room was empty. Yvonne Chech and Marianne Jakin were working in the library, and they tried to hide 18 children in a part of the library, but when they realized that the door they were trying to lock would not lock, they instead had the children crawl into a storage room, and Yvonne barricaded the door with a filing cabinet. All over the school, there were certainly stories like these. Stories of teachers and of employees who heard gunshots and knew that their lives were certainly at stake, and instead of running for cover, they did all that they could to ensure the safety of the children that had been entrusted into their hands. These stories are truly heartwarming in the face of tragedy. All of us could only hope that we could react and would react in the right way in a similar circumstance. At 9:40 a.m., only 5 minutes after Lanza had shot his way through the glass and into the school, police arrived on the scene and people in the school heard what was the final shot. It was believed in hindsight that that shot was the sound of Lanza turning one of his weapons on himself. Lanza shot himself in the lower rear portion of his head with a Glock 20 SF in Classroom 10. Now, I want to take a look at the response team of the people that were involved outside of the school. As I said, Lanza blasted his way into Sandy Hook at 9:35 a.m. And at 9:39, that first 911 call came in to the Newtown police. Less than 1 minute after those first shots were fired. At 9:36:06, 911 broadcasted the shooting at Sandy Hook and told all available units to head in that direction. At 9:37:38, Connecticut State Police dispatched officers as well to Sandy Hook. At 9:39 a.m., just 4 minutes after the first shots were fired, the first Newtown police officer arrived on the scene, followed quickly by more at 9:39:13. As the officers quickly organized and tried to survey the situation as best they could, that last gunshot was heard at 9:40:03 a.m., literally just 5 minutes after those first shots had been fired. Newtown officers would enter Sandy Hook at 9:44:47, and Connecticut State Police arrived and entered Sandy Hook just 2 minutes later. The Newtown Police and Connecticut State Police mobilized local police dogs and police tactical units, as well as a bomb squad and a state police helicopter very quickly. It was all hands on deck. Police locked down the school and began evacuating survivors room by room and escorting the groups of students and adults away from the school. The school was swept 4 times to ensure that there were no other shooters. Can I just take a minute to say that this was an impeccable response time by everyone involved. The fact that officers were on the scene within 5 minutes of those first shots being fired and were in the school within 10 minutes shows fearlessness, dedication, and certainly needs to be recognized. At roughly 10 a.m., Danbury Hospital sent extra medical personnel in the expectation of having to treat numerous victims at the school, and 3 wounded patients were evacuated from the school to the hospital. The 2 children that were escorted from the school alive were sadly pronounced dead later at the hospital, and the adult, Natalie, survived. The New York City Medical Examiner dispatched a portable morgue to assist authorities, and the victims' bodies were removed from the school and formally identified during the night after the shooting. The families were shown photos of their loved ones rather than being faced with the gruesomeness that was their bodies at the scene. A state trooper was then assigned to the family of each victim to protect their privacy and to provide them with ongoing information. Inside of the school, officers found Lanza with the Glock, which was jammed, and the rifle that he had used to shoot all of the other victims was found several feet from his body. A 9mm Sig Sauer P226, which had not been used in the incident at all, was also found on Lanza's person. It was determined that Lanza had reloaded frequently during the massacre and that he had sometimes only fired 15 of 30 rounds and then reloaded. Lanza shot all of his victims except for 2 multiple times. In total, the victims of the Sandy Hook massacre totaled 20 students, 8 boys and 12 girls, and 6 adults, all of whom were female. In room 8, most of the bodies were found crowded in the bathroom. Inside of that bathroom, one 6-year-old girl was the sole survivor from that room, and she was found by police. She had hidden in a corner of the bathroom, and it was later reported that she had played dead. That one poor little girl described the shooter as someone who she believed was incredibly angry, and she heartbreakingly told her mom, quote, "Mommy, I'm okay, but my friends are all dead," unquote. This poor girl. I have no idea how anyone could ever overcome any of this, but the things that that poor child witnessed are things that no human being should have to witness, ever. In room 10, one child was taken to the hospital, but as mentioned later was pronounced dead. There were 6 children from the class who managed to escape, and they and a school bus driver all took refuge in a nearby home. According to the official report released by the state's attorney, 9 children had run from Victoria's classroom, and police had found 2 of them hiding in a class bathroom. The final report of what happened in rooms 8 and 10 said that the sequence of events was indeterminate. That's certainly understandable, since the only people who had survived those rooms, much like the children that had been murdered in cold blood, were only 6 and 7 years old. Investigators in the school did not find a suicide note or any messages that referred to the planning of this specific attack, nor did they find those things at Lanza's home. I should also mention that there were early reports that Lanza's mother worked at Sandy Hook, but those were incorrect. Police also looked into an altercation that had taken place at Sandy Hook the previous day between a person and 4 staff members. 3 of those 4 staff members were Dawn and Mary, who were killed in the massacre, and Natalie, who had also been wounded. Early media reports stated that the name of the shooter was Ryan Lanza, Adam Lanza's brother. Adam had been carrying Ryan's identification at the time of the massacre. Ryan was of course reached out to, and he voluntarily spoke with the police. Ryan said that he had not been in touch with his brother since 2010 because he said that Adam was very sick, and he said that Adam didn't want to speak to anyone, and Ryan decided that he didn't want him to be a part of his life any longer. He said that he did not know his brother and who he had become anymore. As you can imagine, having his name in the media led to a firestorm, and there were so many threats and comments towards Ryan, but it was clear that he had nothing to do with anything at Sandy Hook. Inside of the school, investigators found a lot of unused ammunition, and there was also a shotgun found inside of the 2010 black Honda Civic that Lanza had stolen from his mom's home. It was determined that even though the all-out assault on the school had taken place over only 5 minutes, Lanza had discharged 156 shots, 154 from the rifle, and 2 from the 10mm pistol. The pistol shots were 1 in the hallway, and the 1 shot that he inflicted on himself to take his own life. An autopsy was done on Lanza to determine first if he was under the influence of anything when he unleashed his assault, and it was discovered that he did not have any drugs or alcohol in his system whatsoever. The autopsy also showed that there were not any deformities or tumors on his brain. At some point before he left home for Sandy Hook, Lanza had removed the hard drive from his computer, and he had intentionally damaged it, which made it nearly impossible for investigators to recover all of the data. Police did, though, find proof that Lanza had extensively researched earlier mass shootings, and they found that he had downloaded many videos related to Columbine. He had downloaded other shootings, and he had 2 videos that explained the best way to commit suicide by gunshot. An anonymous law enforcement veteran later stated that Lanza had created a 7x4-foot spreadsheet that listed approximately 500 mass murderers and laid out how many people that they had murdered, what weapons they had used, and ranked all of the mass killings according to many statistics. It was believed that creating such a massive spreadsheet would have taken Lanza years, and that this was some sort of sick score sheet that Lanza had developed as he prepared to unleash his own hell at some point in the future. This information was a leak from within the investigation, as it was not supposed to be information that was released to the public. It was also determined that Lanza was very into video games like Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, and other games of a similar ilk. He thoroughly enjoyed playing shooting games. As mentioned, Lanza had even downloaded and often played a game that was a Columbine RPG, where you played as the active shooter. He would also go into the arcade at the movie theater to play games, often covered up, including a hoodie that covered most of his face. There is a video that can be found online that shows Adam playing Dance Dance Revolution at the theater, and it's very clear that he is hyper-focused on the game as he plays, and frankly, very good at it. His hyper-focus, though, is rather haunting as he moves in a mechanic fashion, and it's clear that nothing else is going on around him that phases him. This is certainly haunting because it is akin, and he is akin to being a machine, much like he was when he stormed into Sandy Hook. It was uncovered that Lanza had multiple personalities and usernames online. I'll leave the usernames out of it by discretion because I don't think that people need to obsess over such things, but I will say that he had made multiple dreadful statements online. For example, he posted on more than one occasion that serial killers were lame and that mass killers were the actual cool killers. It was obvious that he somehow respected and adored people who created mass carnage in a moment more than slow, methodical murderers. Now, I'm not saying that any obsession over a killer is healthy, but certainly it shows how lost he was. Lanza also posted pedophilic statements. He said things along the lines of age of consent should not be a thing, and he said that anyone should be able to have sex with anyone. Inside of Lanza's home, investigators also found 3 samurai swords, a newspaper article about the Northern Illinois University shooting, and an NRA certificate. A gun safe was also located inside of Nancy's bedroom, and there were more than 1,400 rounds of ammunition and also other firearms inside. All of the weapons that Lanza had used and that were left behind in the home were legally owned by Nancy. As I always attempt to do, I do want to take a few moments to say a few words about each of the victims of this incredible tragedy. Recognizing that most of the victims are young children, I want to keep it to a minimum out of respect for them and their families. Jessica Ricos was 6 years old. She loved horseback riding, learning about orcas, writing, and playing with her little brothers. She's survived by her parents, Richard and Krista Ricos, her brothers Travis and Shane, and so many friends and family members. The morning of the massacre, Jessica was telling her mom before she got on the bus that she was excited to sell Girl Scout cookies in January. Jessica sat in the front seat of the bus, looked at her mom through the window, and smiled and waved as the bus pulled away. Jessica's family started the Jessica Ricos Foundation for Whale and Dolphin Conservation in her honor. Olivia Engel was 6 years old. She was said to have brought immediate joy to everyone around her, and she was always smiling and had an infectious giggle. Olivia loved everything that was fun. She was full of life, and she loved to dance. She loved to play tennis and soccer. She also loved to draw, paint, and adored math and reading. She was said to be intelligent, and she was a massive New York Yankee fan. She is survived by her parents, Shannon and Brian, and her brother Braden, as well as numerous friends and family. Olivia's family has a website, oliviaengel.org, that honors the memory of Olivia. AVL Richmond was 6 years old. She loved horses, Harry Potter, the color red, and she had even tried archery after she saw the movie Brave. She had moved to Sandy Hook just 2 years prior from San Diego with her family. AVL was remembered by her parents, Jeremy Richmond and Jennifer Hensel. Jeremy had helped to found the AVL Foundation, which was dedicated to preventing violence and building compassion through brain health research. Jesse Lewis was 6 years old. Jesse was full of light and love, and he brought joy to the world around him with his infectious smile. He was smart, and he had compassion for others that was well beyond his years. Jesse is remembered by his mother Scarlett Lewis, his brother J.T. Lewis, and his father Neil Heslin, as well as numerous friends and family members. Grace Audrey McDonnell was 7 years old. She was a beautiful and artistic soul, and her family said that she represented everything that was good in the world. She loved to go to the beach, and she loved doing art, particularly painting. She's remembered by her parents, Christopher and Lynn McDonnell, and her big brother Jack, as well as numerous friends and family members. Noah Posner was 6 years old. He was born in Danbury, Connecticut. He was a larger-than-life little boy, and he had a lot of energy and exhibited a ton of love. Noah also has a twin sister, and they had just celebrated their 6th birthday on November 20th. He is remembered by his parents Lenny and Veronique, as well as his siblings Danielle, Michael, Sophia, and his twin sister Ariel, as well as many friends and family members. Noah's father, Leonard, is the founder of the HONR Network, a non-profit organization that supports victims of mass violence who experience hate speech and harassment online. Anna Marquez Green was 6 years old. She and her family had just moved to Sandy Hook a few months before the shooting occurred. Anna had a deep love for singing, even before she could speak. Her gift of melody, pitch, and rhythm was remarkable for her age. She also loved to dance as much as she loved to sing. She is remembered by her parents James and Nelma Green and her brother Isaiah. Emily Parker was 6 years old. She was full of life and full of love and full of compassion. She was always quick to start up conversation with anyone, anywhere, and she could always be found with her markers, colored pens, and paper because she was always drawing. She also painted, made ceramics, and loved fashion. Emily also loved to read, and she had been teaching one of her younger sisters to read. She's remembered by her parents, Robbie and Alyssa, and her sisters, Madeline and Samantha, as well as many friends and family members. In her memory was created the Emily Parker Memorial, which goes to the Emily Parker Art Connection, a non-profit connecting children who suffer from trauma and abuse to art therapy. Charlotte Bacon was 6 years old. She filled everyone in her life with joy and love. She's remembered for her beautiful smile, her energy for life, and the unique way that she expressed her individuality, usually with the color pink. Charlotte loved animals, and she enjoyed practicing Taekwondo. She's remembered by her parents, Joel and Joanne Bacon, and her brother, Guy Bacon. The Charlotte Helen Bacon Foundation pays tribute to the life of Charlotte by supporting the things that she loved, especially animals, and supporting families that have suffered the death of a child. Catherine Hubbard was 6 years old. She will be remembered for her passion for animals and her constant and beautiful smile. She's remembered by her parents Matthew and Jennifer, her brother Frederick, and many friends and family. The Catherine Violet Hubbard Foundation was started in Catherine's memory to commemorate and honor her life, and has since opened the Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary, which enriches the lives of all beings by promoting compassion and acceptance by honoring the bond between animals, humans, and the environment. Josephine Gay was 7 years old, and she had just celebrated her birthday 3 days before the massacre. She inspired everyone that ever came into contact with her beautiful smile, her loving heart, and her playful spirit. She was known for her love of all things purple. She's remembered by her parents Michelle and Bob, her sisters Sophia and Marie, and many friends and family members. Her parents set up a fundraising campaign called Joey's Fund to help other families whose children have autism. Daniel Barden was 7 years old. Daniel was the light of his family's life, and he touched the lives of everyone that met with him with his warmth, his inspiring spirit, and his spirit of kindness and generosity. He was always outgoing, affectionate, and loved to use his vast imagination. He loved to go to the beach. He loved playing the drums, playing foosball, reading, and making s'mores around a campfire. He was also on a soccer team and a swim team. He is remembered by his parents Jacqueline and Mark and his siblings James and Natalie. His family started the Daniel Barden Foundation to inspire others to do random acts of kindness. James Mattioli was 6 years old. He was affectionately known as Jay. He was an affectionate boy who found joy in the simple things. His excitement and enthusiasm for life were absolutely contagious. He was proud to say that he was the tallest in his first grade class. He liked school, doing math, loved to sing, and he loved food. He also loved to wrestle, swim in the pool, ride his bike, and loved to play baseball and basketball. James is remembered by his parents Cindy and Mark and his sister Anna, as well as many other friends and family members. Caroline Previti was 6 years old. Caroline loved to draw and she loved to dance. Her smile brought joy and happiness to everyone that she ever met. She's remembered by her parents Jeffrey and Sandy and her sibling Walker, as well as many friends and family members. Her parents started the Caroline Previti Foundation to support children who lack the financial resources to be involved in extracurricular activities. Allison Wyatt was 6 years old. She was affectionately known as Allie to those who knew her. She was beautiful and a light to the world around her. She loved to laugh, but she enjoyed making others laugh even more. Allie enjoyed swimming lessons, and she wanted to be a teacher when she grew up. Her love for teaching was stoked by her teacher, Vicky Soto, who was also killed at Sandy Hook. She loved to draw, she loved to read, and she was always asking questions and looking to learn. She was known as a generous, caring, and giving young lady. Dylan Hockley was 6 years old, and he was born in Winchester, England. Dylan's mom has described him as her butterfly. He was autistic, and he was a flapper. She says that he was and always will be a beautiful butterfly. He was full of hope and promise. He's remembered by his parents Ian Thomas and Nicole Marie, his brother Jake, and many friends and family members. Nicole has gone on to trumpet gun violence prevention, and she is also the CEO of Sandy Hook Promise. Madeline Feng Su was 6 years old. She was called Maddie by those that knew her, and she was an exuberant, energetic girl. She enjoyed life, and everything to her was an adventure. She loved bright, flowery dresses, she loved dogs, and she adored music. She also enjoyed swimming in the pool, and she loved princesses. She's remembered by her parents Donna and John, as well as her 2 sisters. Chase Kowalski was 7 years old, and he was a fun and energetic boy that had a true love of life. Chase completed his first triathlon at the age of 6, and he ran in many community road races. He had a deep love for the game of baseball, and he wanted to join the Cub Scouts. He also loved to ride his bike and ride his quad. Chase is remembered by his parents Rebecca and Stephen, and his 2 sisters, Brittany and Erin, as well as countless other friends and family members. His family started the CMAC Foundation, that's CMAK, that works through activities to heal and strengthen children, families, and communities. Jack Pinto was 6 years old. Jack loved to play flag football, baseball, and basketball, and he also enjoyed wrestling and skiing. He was a loving and vivacious young boy who was appreciated and loved by everyone who ever was lucky enough to meet him. He's remembered by his parents Dean and Tricia, his brother Benjamin, and so many other friends and family members. His parents have partnered with the Every Kid sports team to honor Jack's memory and to share his love of play through that organization, which helps children get access to youth sports that otherwise could not. Benjamin Wheeler was 6 years old. He was known as Benny by those that were close to him, and he was a funny and very active boy who was absolutely obsessed with lighthouses. He was described by his father as a life force, and he moved very quickly in his short life. He loved to play soccer, he loved to swim, and he was a member of Scouts. He's remembered by his parents David and Francine, and his brother Nate, as well as countless other family members and friends. His parents created an organization called Ben's Lighthouse in his honor, and its goal is to try to create a more compassionate world. Victoria Soto was 27 years old, and she was a first-grade teacher at Sandy Hook. She was the glue that held her family together. She organized all of her family events, including her favorite holiday, Christmas. She was beautiful, smart, and funny, with a contagious laugh, and she was absolutely adored by her students. She was a passionate, dedicated, creative, and funny teacher, and she was excited every day to be in her classroom teaching. She left some enduring words on her Facebook page that I think sum up who she is and what she believed. Quote, "Take too many pictures, laugh too much, forgive freely, and love like you've never been hurt. Life comes with no guarantee, no timeouts, and no second chances. You just have to live life to the fullest. Tell someone what they mean to you, and tell someone off. Speak out. Dance in the pouring rain. Hold someone's hand. Comfort a friend. Fall asleep watching the sun come up. Stay up late. Be a flirt. And smile until your face hurts. Don't be afraid to take chances or fall in love, and most of all, live in the moment, because every second you spend angry or upset is a second of happiness that you can never get back." Unquote. She is remembered by her parents, Donna and Carlos, and her siblings Jillian, Carly, and Carlos Matthew, as well as a litany of friends, family, and former students. Victoria died while trying to protect her students, putting herself between the shooter and those students that she loved. Lauren Russo was 30 years old, and she was a full-time substitute teacher at Sandy Hook. She had just started working at Sandy Hook full-time just weeks before the massacre took place. Lauren was the teacher in room 8, and she herded her students into the washroom in an attempt to try and save them from the shooter. She was known for her exuberance, her love of family and of children, her friendliness, kindness, and loyalty, and her ever-present smile. She loved to sing and dance, and she was adored by her students. Lauren is remembered by her parents Jill and Teresa, her boyfriend Tony, and a countless amount of friends and family members. Dawn Hawksprung was 47 years old and the principal of Sandy Hook. She was known to always be enthusiastic and always smiling and always game to try anything and do anything. She was known as a fierce leader and an educational activist, and she was admired by her colleagues, students, and parents for her nurturing and caring nature. She always tried to get the most out of every student by inspiring them with the importance of lifelong learning. She believed in inclusiveness, creativity, and academic ambition. There was nothing in the world that Dawn loved more, though, than her family. She's remembered by her mom Cheryl and was predeceased by her father William. She's also remembered by her husband George and her 2 daughters Christina and Erica, as well as an incredible extended family and many friends. Mary Sherlach was the school psychologist, and she was tragically only 1 year away from her retirement. She started working at Sandy Hook in 1994, doing what she termed as God's work by helping the children who needed her the most. She's remembered as a loving wife and mother and a caring soul who was always around to lend an ear and a shoulder to cry on for anyone that was in need. She's remembered as a woman who always put kids before herself, First, her own children, but right behind them, every child that she ever worked with at Sandy Hook. She moved mountains for the children and for the families that needed the help the most, and many people remember her as being someone that changed the lives of their family through her work at Sandy Hook. She was truly a hero to so many people, including warning other staff to stay where they were when she was confronted by the shooter on the day of the massacre. Mary is remembered by her husband William, her daughters Maura and Katie, and a lovely extended family and many friends, students, and families that she helped over the years at Sandy Hook and elsewhere. Rachel Divino was 29 years old, and she was murdered while barricading the classroom to try and keep the gunman from getting into the children, and she died shielding the child that she was working with. Tragically, her boyfriend had asked her parents for permission to ask for her hand in marriage just days before the massacre. Rachel was a behavioral therapist who had just recently started working at Sandy Hook. Rachel loved her work as a therapist, and she would even make home visits that were off the clock to see the children and the families that she worked with. She was someone who was always fighting and always standing up for other people, and she always stood up for what was right. She is remembered by her parents, Mary and Ralph, as well as her stepfather, Peter, and her sisters, Sarah and Hannah, as well as an extensive family, many friends, and many families that loved her that she worked with. Anne Marie Murphy was 52 years old, and she was a paraprofessional at Sandy Hook who worked with a special needs boy at the school who tragically was also murdered, Dylan Hockley. Her body was found covering a group of children, and she died with Dylan in her arms. She's remembered for her love of the arts, walking outdoors, and most importantly, her family. She was known to have a quick wit, a kind heart, and she was always a brave woman. She's remembered by her husband Michael, her loving children Kelly, Colleen, Paige, and Thomas, and her extended family, friends, and numerous children and their families that she had worked with in the past. Those were the victims at the school, but I would be remiss if I did not briefly mention Lanza's mother, the first person to lose her life that day, Nancy Lanza. She was 52 years old, and she lost her life at the hands of Lanza inside of her home. These are 26 lives that were tragically taken in a matter of 5 minutes at the school, and likely less than an hour altogether. Children's lives were taken who were 6 and 7 years old and who quite literally had full lives ahead of them. Many of these children grew up in Christian homes with amazing values and longed to live happy lives, and they all had the world as their oyster. There's no telling what those 20 children could have contributed to our world and how many lives would have been changed for the better if they had been allowed to have that chance to live their lives. It's heartbreaking to look at the faces of these children and read about their lives and read their obituaries to find out who they were. And these teachers and school employees that risked their lives and who did everything that they could in unspeakable circumstances to try to save and to preserve the children that they had been entrusted with. Every one of those 26 lives that was taken at Sandy Hook was a complete and utter tragedy and changed lives in negative ways that will likely continue to be felt for generations. It's heartbreaking. That's really all that there is to say. The final report that came from the state attorney's office was that Adam Lanza had acted alone and the case was closed. This was published on November 25th of 2013, nearly 1 year after the massacre. The report noted that Lanza had familiarity and access to firearms and ammunitions, and he had an obsession with mass murders, Columbine in particular. The report noted that Lanza had planned his actions, the taking of his own life included, but that there was no clear indication on why he chose to target Sandy Hook. The report also noted that Lanza seemed to have significant mental health issues that affected his ability to live a normal life and his ability to interact with other people, even those that he should have been close with. It was believed that mental health professionals that had worked with him previously did not see any markers that could have predicted his actions. A report from the Office of the Child Advocate concluded that, quote, there was not one thing that there was necessarily the tipping point driving Lanza to commit the Sandy Hook shooting. Rather, there was a cascade of events, many self-imposed, that included loss of school, absence of work, disruption of the relationship with his one friend, virtually no personal contact with family, virtually total and increasing isolation, fear of losing his home and of a change in his relationship with his mother, his only caretaker and connection. He had worsening OCD, depression and anxiety, profound and possibly worsening anorexia, and an increasing obsession with mass murder occurring in the total absence of any engagement with the outside world. Adam increasingly lived in an alternate universe in which ruminations about mass shootings were his central preoccupation, unquote. The authors of this report noted that despite multiple developmental and mental health problems, Lanza had not received adequate mental health assistance or treatment, and they wrote that it is fair to surmise that had Lanza's mental illness been adequately treated in the last years of his life, at least one predisposing factor might have been mitigated. The authors of this report also believed that Lanza chose Sandy Hook, at least in part, because it was an elementary school, and thus he believed he would have a better chance of overpowering people there. It really and truly is haunting to think that not only did this monster indiscriminately take the lives of all of these people, he quite possibly chose to attack Sandy Hook because he knew that the children were small and would be unable to overpower him. For me, I think that the proximity of the school to his home and the fact that he knew the school also played some part. As I mentioned earlier, I do believe that Lanza saw Sandy Hook as the beginning of the end in his life. It was the place that he was moved to when his family uprooted, and it was the start of all of the triggers that likely helped lead him down his dark path. There have been numerous legal proceedings in the fallout of this massacre, and I felt that it was pertinent to mention at least a few of them here. In January of 2015, the families of two of the first graders who lost their lives in the massacre filed a lawsuit against the City of Newtown and the Newtown Board of Education, alleging inadequate security at the school. It would be published and released in regards to this case on May 7th of 2018 that the city and the school board were protected by governmental immunity, and the case was thrown out. In March of 2015, it was announced that the parents of children and teachers that died in the massacre filed a lawsuit against the estate of Nancy Lanza. Those suits were based on a claim that Nancy did not properly secure her firearms, which allowed for Lanza, a person who had numerous known mental health issues, to have free access to them. The attorneys representing the families said that Nancy was believed to have homeowners insurance on her home that was worth more than $1 million, and they were seeking compensation based on that. The case was settled in December of 2015, and 16 plaintiffs shared a $1.5 million payment from the estate of Nancy Lanza. On December 15th of 2014, 9 families of the 26 victims of the shooting filed a class action lawsuit against Bushmaster, Remington Arms, Camfor, and Riverview Sales, seeking unspecified damages. The plaintiffs in this case alleged that the XM15 E2S was suitable only for military and policing use, and that Bushmaster had marketed it for civilian use. The case was dismissed on October of 2016, but an appeal to the Connecticut Supreme Court partially reinstated the case. On July 26th of 2021, a judge refused another motion to dismiss the case, and the next day Remington offered a $33 million settlement to be shared by the 9 families. On February 15th of 2022, Remington agreed to settle for $73 million. Radio host, conspiracy theorist, and, in my opinion, general douchebag, Alex Jones was sued on April 17th of 2018 for defamation by 3 parents whose children were killed in the shooting, for his previous statements and comments that the Sandy Hook shooting was completely fake and a giant hoax that was created by opponents of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, of course, protects the right of the individual to bear arms and use those arms for lawful purposes, such as self-defense within the home. In his defense, Jones did back off of his comments later and say that he believed that the shooting was real. On May 23, 2018, 6 more families sued Jones for his statements. Jones declared bankruptcy in April of 2022 as a result of the defamation lawsuits. On August 4th of 2022, Jones was ordered to pay $4.1 million of compensatory damages to Sandy Hook parents, and the following day he was ordered to pay another $45.2 million in punitive damages. On October 12, 2022, Jones was ordered to pay $965 million in damages to the families of the Sandy Hook victims. In the nearing 12 years since the massacre, Sandy Hook School has been demolished, and a new school with the same name was built in its place with numerous security features, including bulletproof glass exteriors, fencing around the perimeter of the building, and fortified safe rooms. The new school was rebuilt with a grant of $50 million. The home where Nancy and Adam lived was also demolished and has been kept as open space. On June 12th of 2024, around 60 students who had survived the shooting graduated from Newtown High School, and at a ceremony to mark the event, Principal Kimberly Longobuccio read out the names of those who had succumbed as a part of the massacre, and the moment was then followed by a moment of silence in their memory. This would have been their graduating year. A memorial has been constructed as of August 2022 that opened to the public on November 13th of 2022, and it features a stone basin that is engraved with the names of all of the victims, and there is a young sycamore tree at its center. A sycamore tree, according to Celtic mythology, is associated with the world tree, and it connects heaven, earth, and the underworld. It's believed to be a home to spirits. Also, please check out sandyhookpromise.org, a site dedicated to this massacre that has a lot of input from the families of these people who have all lost their lives way too soon. Sandy Hook Promise envisions a future where children are free from shootings and acts of violence in their school, homes, and communities. And thus, I leave it there and kick off what's going to be a tragic month focused on a few schools. I knew that I had to get this one out of the way as soon as I could because even though there is no such thing as an easy school massacre to cover, the ages of the children in this well-known case certainly make this one worse. I found myself getting very emotional during research and wanting to focus in on these poor babies and their school staff that tried their best to protect them. May God be with all of these families as the years go by, because the loss of a loved one is never easy, but no parent should ever have to bury a child, and certainly not at the age of 6 or 7 and at the hands of a complete monster. I will close by saying that you need to ensure that if you have children, send them off with love and kisses and hugs every single day, regardless of what is going on. Tomorrow is never a guarantee, and we need to love our children and love all of our loved ones. If you love this show, please also jump onto Patreon and show GBNF a little bit of support for all of this hard work each and every week and help to keep this thing afloat and keep the lights on. You can also help out the show by checking us out on social media by searching for Gone But Never Forgotten or GBNF Pod nearly anywhere. I hope to see you there. In the meantime, know that I'm also dropping another patron-only episode as this episode drops, which is covering a crazy case out of the UK where Shay Groves, another woman with a strong love and lust for true crime, took the life of her boyfriend, Frankie Fitzgerald. You can check out that case by signing up on Patreon on any of the tiers, and they start for as low as the cost of a cup of coffee each and every month. I release 1 to 2 patron-only episodes each month, and you don't want to miss them. In closing, most of all, thank you for tuning in each and every week to this podcast, and thank you for supporting the show. I hope that you and all of yours continue to be well, be healthy, stay safe, and of course, be better. I'll see you back here next week for another case.